there is a warning that echoes across centuries. It was written not for kings, not for armies, but for those who dare to see beyond the surface of human nature. Machiavelli understood something most men refuse to believe. That virtue, in its most radiant form, can be nothing more than a mask. That softness can hide steel. That beauty, charm, and tenderness are not always born from innocence, but from intention. And in the theater of human desire, the most dangerous players are not those who wield swords, but those who wield smiles. Look closely at the world around you. Watch how a woman enters a room. Not just her body, but her presence. The way her eyes scan for attention. The way her voice shifts depending on who listens. The way vulnerability becomes currency. This is not an accident. This is architecture. Emotional architecture. And most men never see the blueprint. Machiavelli warned that it is far safer to be feared than loved. But he also understood something darker. That love itself can be engineered. That affection can be performed so convincingly that even the performer begins to believe it. And in that performance, control is born. Not the violent kind. Not the obvious kind. But the kind that wraps itself around a man's mind so gently, he mistakes the rope for a ribbon. This is where the illusion begins. In the space between what is shown and what is true. Between the tears that fall and the ones that are summoned. Between the woman who needs you and the woman who has learned that needing you is the fastest way to own you. And the man who cannot tell the difference becomes a puppet in a play he didn't know he auditioned for. She arrives clothed in virtue. Her words are kind. Her touch is soft. Her pain is visible. And because you were raised to protect, to provide, to fix what is broken, you step forward. You offer your strength. You open your chest and hand her your heart as if it were medicine, and she takes it. Not with malice, perhaps, not with cruelty, but she takes it nonetheless, because she has learned, consciously or not, that a man's compassion is the gateway to his surrender. This is not about hatred. This is not about blame. This is about sight, about learning to see the game while it is being played. Because the moment you understand that virtue can be performed, you begin to ask a more dangerous question. If she is not what she seems, then what is she? And more importantly, what have you become in her presence? You have become smaller, quieter, more careful. You have learned to manage her emotions as if they were your responsibility. You have started to believe that her happiness is your burden, and her pain is your failure. And in that belief, you have given away something you will never get back unless you take it. Your sovereignty. Machiavelli did not write for the naive. He wrote for those willing to see power as it truly operates. Not in declarations, but in whispers. Not in force, but in perception. And the woman who understands this does not need to raise her voice. She does not need to demand. She simply needs to appear in a way that makes you feel like the hero of her story. And once you accept that role, the script is no longer yours to write. But let us go deeper. Let us move beyond the surface and into the mind, into the psychology of control. Control is not what you think it is. It is not loud. It is not violent. It does not arrive with threats or ultimatums. Real control is silent. It lives in the space between words, in the pause before she responds, in the sigh that carries just enough weight to make you feel guilty for something you didn't do, in the smile that appears only when you perform correctly. This is intermittent reinforcement. This is operant conditioning. And this is how the mind learns to obey without ever being told. Freud understood that we are driven by forces we do not see. That beneath the surface of every action lies a motive we are afraid to name. Desire, fear, the need to be seen, the terror of being abandoned. And the woman who learns to speak to those hidden parts of you does not need to control your actions. She controls the feelings that drive them. She does not ask you to stay. She makes leaving feel like betrayal. She does not demand your attention. She makes its absence feel like cruelty. She does not tell you what to do. She makes you feel like a failure when you do anything else. And this is genius, because you cannot fight what you cannot see. You cannot defend against an accusation that was never spoken. You can only feel the weight of it, pressing down until you adjust your behavior to make it stop. This is not love. This is leverage. And leverage, in the hands of someone who understands human psychology, becomes a blade sharper than any sword. Jung spoke of the anima, the feminine presence that lives inside every man's mind, the image of woman that shapes how he sees all women. And when a real woman learns to mirror that image, when she becomes the living embodiment of what his unconscious craves, she does not seduce his body. She colonizes his psyche. She becomes the voice inside his head, the standard against which all other women are measured, the absence he feels even when she is standing beside him, and this is where manipulation transcends strategy and becomes art. Because now, she is not just in his life. She is in his thoughts, his dreams, his identity. He begins to see himself through her eyes, to measure his worth by her approval, to define his masculinity by his ability to keep her satisfied. And in that surrender, he loses the one thing a man cannot afford to lose: his center. The Machiavellian ruler knows that the masses are easier to control when they believe the ruler cares for them. That loyalty is born not from force but from the illusion of mutual devotion. And the woman who rules a man's heart uses the same principle. She does not take power. She makes him give it. She does not cage him. She makes him feel safe inside the bars. And the most dangerous part is this: she may not even know she is doing it. Because manipulation, when learned early enough, becomes instinct. It becomes survival. It becomes the only language she knows. And so she performs it flawlessly, without script, without rehearsal, because to her it is not performance. It is simply how the world works. But understand this: control only works when the controlled cannot see it. The moment a man begins to notice the pattern, the moment he starts to connect the tears to the requests, the silence to the punishment, the affection to the compliance, the spell begins to break, and that is when the game changes. Because awareness is the only antidote to manipulation. Not anger, not bitterness, not revenge, just sight, cold, clear, undeniable sight. Now we arrive at one of the darkest instruments in the feminine arsenal: the weaponization of pain. There is something uniquely powerful about suffering. It disarms. It softens. It makes the observer feel responsible, even when they are not. And when a woman learns that her tears can move a man more than her words, that her fragility can extract more than her strength, she stumbles upon a kind of power that feels almost holy. Because who can blame someone who is hurting? Who can question someone who is broken? But here is the truth most men do not want to hear. Pain can be theater. Weakness can be costume. And the woman who has learned that vulnerability opens doors will wear it like perfume. She does not cry to release emotion. She cries to create it. In you. She does not collapse because she cannot stand. She collapses because you will catch her. And in catching her, you prove that you care, that you are loyal, that you are willing to sacrifice your peace for hers. And once that is established, the script repeats. Again. And again. And again. This is not to say all pain is false. This is not to say all tears are manipulation. But it is to say this: when pain becomes pattern, when suffering arrives only in moments of conflict, when weakness appears precisely when accountability is near, you are not witnessing emotion. You are witnessing strategy. Sympathy is one of the most exploitable emotions a man can feel, because sympathy makes you act against your own interest. It makes you ignore red flags. It makes you forgive what should not be forgiven. It makes you stay when you should walk away. And the woman who understands this does not need to convince you with logic. She simply needs to make you feel like her suffering is your fault, or worse, that you are the only one who can fix it. And so you try. You bend. You apologize for things you didn't do. You accommodate moods you didn't create. You become a hostage negotiator in your own relationship, endlessly trying to de-escalate a crisis you cannot name. And every time you succeed, every time you calm her down, every time you make her smile again, you are rewarded. Not with peace, but with relief. And relief, when repeated, becomes addiction. This is the seduction of sympathy. It makes you believe that your value is tied to her emotional state, that your purpose as a man is to manage her inner world, that love is measured not by mutual respect, but by how much of yourself you are willing to sacrifice to keep her from falling apart. But here is what Machiavelli would say. A prince who allows his kingdom to depend on the mood of another is not a ruler. He is a servant, and a man who allows his peace to be determined by a woman's pain is not her partner. He is her resource. The naive man does not see this. He sees only the surface, the tears, the trembling voice, the plea for reassurance. And because he is good, because he wants to believe in love, because he was taught that protecting women is noble, he steps into the trap with open arms, and the door closes softly behind him. This is where the fall happens, not with a crash, but with a whisper. The naive man is not weak. He is not foolish. He is simply unaware. He was raised in a world that taught him that women are gentle, that love is pure, that vulnerability is always honest. And so when he encounters a woman who speaks the language of emotion fluently, who can cry on cue, who can shift from anger to affection in seconds, he does not recognize it as skill. He sees it as depth, as sensitivity, as proof that she feels more intensely than others. And so he falls. Not because he is stupid, but because he is kind. And kindness, when unguarded, becomes the easiest door to walk through. Machiavelli warned that it is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. But in the realm of relationships, this wisdom is inverted. The woman who can make a man love her without fearing the loss of himself holds absolute power. Because love, unchecked by boundaries, becomes servitude. And servitude, when wrapped in affection, feels like devotion. The naive man begins to lose himself in pieces. First, his time, then his hobbies, then his friends, then his opinions. He learns to speak carefully, to avoid triggers, to predict her moods like a meteorologist studying storms. He becomes hypervigilant, always scanning for signs of displeasure, always ready to adjust, to apologize, to soothe. And in this process, something dies. Not his love for her, but his respect for himself. Because deep down, beneath the rationalizations, beneath the hope that things will get better, he knows. He knows he has become smaller. He knows he is walking on eggshells. He knows that the version of himself he presents to her is not the version he used to be. And that knowing, that quiet awareness that he has traded his sovereignty for her approval, eats at him in ways he cannot name. But he stays. Because leaving would mean admitting he was wrong, that he wasted time, that he gave his heart to someone who saw it not as a gift, but as collateral. And so he stays, hoping that if he just loves her enough, if he just tries harder, if he just becomes better, she will finally see him. She will finally appreciate him. She will finally stop testing him. But she will not. Because the testing is not about you. It is about her. It is about the need to know that she still has power, that she can still make you react, that you are still controllable. And the more you prove your loyalty, the more she will test it. Because loyalty, when guaranteed, loses its value. And a woman who thrives on emotional intensity will always create the conditions for drama, because drama is proof that you care. This is the fall. The moment a man realizes that his love is being used as a leash, that his empathy is being turned into obligation, that his desire to make her happy has become his prison. And in that realization, two paths emerge. He can stay and become a shadow of himself, or he can leave and reclaim what was taken. But leaving is not enough, because if he does not understand how he got there, he will find himself in the same place with a different face, and the cycle will repeat. Because the wound is not her. The wound is his belief that his value is measured by his ability to be needed, and that belief must die before the man can be reborn. Now let us turn the lens. Let us stop seeing her as villain and start seeing her as strategist. The Machiavellian woman is not born. She is forged, often by pain, often by betrayal, often by a world that taught her early that survival means manipulation, that safety means control, that love is not something you trust, it is something you engineer. She is not evil. She is aware. And awareness, when combined with intelligence and emotional fluency, becomes one of the most dangerous forces in human interaction. Because she has learned what most men refuse to accept. That power does not go to the loudest, but to the most perceptive. That control does not require force. It requires understanding. And she understands you better than you understand yourself. She watches how you respond when she withdraws. She studies what makes you anxious. She notes what you brag about, what you hide, what you need to hear to feel like a man. And she files it away. Not out of malice, but out of instinct. Because in her world, knowledge is armor. And the more she knows, the safer she feels. This is the woman Machiavelli would have admired. Not because she is cruel, but because she is strategic. She does not react, she calculates. She does not demand, she influences. She does not chase, she creates the conditions that make you come to her. And in doing so, she masters the one art that most people never learn. The art of making power look like love. She knows that men are not moved by logic. They are moved by feeling, by ego, by the belief that they are special, that they are different, that they are the exception. And so she makes you feel that way. She mirrors your values. She laughs at your jokes. She asks about your dreams. She becomes the audience your soul has been waiting for. And in that space, you do not see the strategy. You see connection. But connection, for her, is not the goal. Security is. Admiration is. The assurance that she will never be abandoned, never be powerless, never be caught off guard again. And so she builds loyalty not through honesty, but through indispensability. She makes you feel like no one else understands you the way she does, like no one else could handle your darkness, like no one else would stay, and once you believe that, she has won. Because now you are not staying out of love. You are staying out of fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of proving her right. Fear of admitting you were manipulated. And fear, as Machiavelli knew, is a far more reliable foundation than affection. But here is the paradox. The Machiavellian woman, for all her intelligence, is trapped by her own design. Because the loyalty she engineers is never quite real. The love she extracts is never quite free. And deep down, beneath the control, she knows that if she stopped performing, if she stopped managing, if she let her guard down, you might leave. And so she can never rest. She can never trust. She is forever the architect of a house she cannot live in. This is her tragedy. That in mastering others, she loses the one thing she truly wants. To be loved for who she is, not for what she does. But that door is closed now, because she has learned too much, seen too much, played the game too long, and you cannot unlearn the mechanics of power once you have held it in your hands. And so she continues, charming, testing, controlling, not because she wants to, but because she does not know how to stop. And in that, she becomes both queen and prisoner, ruler of a kingdom she cannot enjoy. But there is another kind of man, one who does not fall, one who does not bend, one who watches the performance and remains still. He is the man who has learned the greatest lesson Machiavelli ever taught. That perception is reality, that whoever controls the frame controls the outcome, and that the only way to escape manipulation is to stop participating in the illusion. This is the aware man. And he is not built through bitterness. He is built through observation, through pattern recognition, through the quiet, painful acceptance that not everyone who smiles is your friend, and not everyone who cries is your responsibility. He has learned to detach, not from emotion, but from reaction. He feels, he sees, he understands, but he does not let those feelings dictate his choices. He does not confuse empathy with obligation. He does not mistake her pain for his guilt, and in that detachment he becomes something she cannot control. Unpredictable. Because control requires reaction. It requires you to care more about her feelings than your own truth. It requires you to prioritize her mood over your peace. And the moment you stop doing that, the entire system collapses. She can cry, and you can acknowledge it without rescuing her. She can withdraw, and you can let her go without chasing. She can test, and you can smile and say nothing. And in that silence, you reclaim your power. The aware man does not fight. He does not argue. He does not try to convince her of anything, because he knows that words are part of the game, and the only way to win is to stop playing. He simply observes, responds when it serves him, walks away when it does not, and in doing so, he becomes what Machiavelli would call a prince of his own mind. He is not bitter. He is not cruel. He is simply no longer available for emotional manipulation, and that unavailability is not a wall. It is a boundary, a clear, calm, immovable line that says, I will care for you, but I will not be consumed by you. I will support you, but I will not sacrifice myself for your comfort. I will love you, but I will not lose myself in the process. And the strange thing is, this is when she begins to respect him, not because he has become cold, but because he has become solid. Because the man who cannot be shaken is the man who cannot be controlled. And deep down, beneath the need for power, there is a part of her that has always been searching for that. For a man who will not collapse under the weight of her emotions. For a man who can hold space without being consumed by it. For a man who is strong enough to let her be weak without becoming weak himself. This is the rise. Not through dominance, but through self-possession. Not through control, but through clarity. And it begins the moment a man decides that his peace is not negotiable, that his identity is not for sale, that his love is a gift, not a ransom, and in that decision, everything changes. Perception is reality. This is the final law, the one truth that cuts through every illusion, every mask, every carefully crafted performance. Because in the end, nothing is true except what is believed. And whoever controls belief controls the world. Machiavelli understood this. He knew that a ruler does not need to be good. He only needs to appear good. That a prince does not need to be loved. He only needs to be seen as worthy of love. That power is not about what you are, but about what others think you are. And in the space between those two things, entire kingdoms rise and fall. The same is true in the theater of intimacy. The woman who appears virtuous is treated as virtuous, regardless of her intentions. The man who appears weak is treated as weak, regardless of his strength. And the relationship that appears healthy from the outside is believed to be healthy, even if behind closed doors it is a battlefield. This is why the mask is so powerful. Because most people do not look beyond it. They do not ask questions. They do not investigate. They see the surface and assume it reflects the depths. And in that assumption, they become easy to lead. But the man who learns to see past the mask, who learns to observe behavior rather than words, who learns to measure truth by pattern rather than promise, becomes immune. Not to love, but to illusion. Not to connection, but to control. And in that immunity, he finds something most men never experience. Freedom. Freedom to choose based on reality, not fantasy. Freedom to walk away from beauty that hides cruelty. Freedom to stay with depth that does not need to perform. Freedom to love without losing himself. And that freedom, once tasted, becomes the only thing worth protecting. Machiavelli warned men about women like this. Not because women are the enemy, but because unconsciousness is. Not because all women manipulate, but because the ones who do are so skilled that by the time you realize it, you have already given everything away. And by then, the only question left is whether you have the courage to take it back. This is not about hatred. This is not about fear. This is about sight. About learning to see the game while others are still convinced it is love. About understanding that virtue, beauty, and tears can all be weapons when wielded by someone who knows how to use them. And about choosing, finally, to stop being a character in someone else's script and start writing your own. Because in the end, power does not belong to the one who performs best. It belongs to the one who sees most clearly. And the man who sees clearly does not need to control anyone. He simply needs to control himself, his attention, his energy, his peace, and in that control he becomes untouchable. Not because he is cold, but because he is awake, and awareness, once gained, cannot be lost. It can only be ignored, and the man who refuses to ignore it becomes something rare in this world. Someone who cannot be played, someone who cannot be bought, someone who cannot be broken by tears, seduced by beauty, or imprisoned by guilt. He becomes free, and freedom in a world built on illusion is the most dangerous thing a man can possess. So let this be the final word. Not a warning, not a weapon, but a mirror. Look into it. See what you have become. See what you have allowed. See where you gave your power away because you were afraid of being cruel, afraid of being cold, afraid of being alone. And then decide. Decide if you will continue to live in someone else's reality, or if you will finally build your own. Because the world does not change. Human nature does not change. The game does not end, but you can stop playing it. You can step back. You can observe. You can choose differently. And in that choice, you reclaim the one thing no one can take from you unless you give it. Your mind, Machiavelli wrote for princes, but his wisdom belongs to any man willing to see the truth. That power is not about force. It is about perception. That love is not about sacrifice. It is about sovereignty. And that the most dangerous person you will ever meet is not the one who hates you. It is the one who makes you forget yourself. So remember who you are. Remember what you are worth. And remember that no matter how beautiful the mask, it is still just a mask. And beneath it, there is only one question that matters. Are you looking at a partner or a performance? The answer will set you free.